The state's minimum wage hit $15 at the beginning of this year, the last of a series of gradual hikes signed into law back in 2018. But a lot has happened since then, and now a group of lawmakers are pushing to raise it again. Their bill would increase the minimum wage to $20 an hour by 2027. It would also raise the minimum wage for tipped workers to $12 an hour. That is up from just $6.75 right now. One of the bill's sponsors joins me to discuss this. State Senator Jason Lewis, Vice Chair of the Committee on Labor and Workforce Development. Also with us this evening is Rob Stevens, a minimum wage worker and fair wage organizer. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you.
Great to be with you, Crystal.
I want to start with you, Rob. We're hearing these numbers for the minimum wage as it sits. Has this been, in your experience, a livable wage?
No. Well, first, let's start off with even $20 is not sufficient. That's even a bare minimum, because when you look at that over the course of a month, we're talking $3,200. That's without taxes. You'd be hard-pressed to find a place where they say 1/3 of your income should be towards rent for $1,000 in the Commonwealth. So we got to start with that. That's a bare minimum. But what I'm making right now at Starbucks is $16.25. There are Starbucks within the Commonwealth that unionize that are only making minimum wage. I call it weaponized kindness, where if you don't know it's a kind gesture, or if it's a kind gesture if you don't know that it was a weapon to punish other people. So there are baristas making that minimum wage. But then we got to take out taxes. And for those like myself who have to have health insurance for a family, that $16.25 dwindles down to about $5 an hour.
Wow.
So even could work 40 hours a week, which they do not schedule anyone for that amount. That's $200 a week. It is not livable. At this point, the health insurance that they take out is so much that I can't afford co-pays, so I just go without seeing a doctor. And these are the sacrifices we're making while I know my productivity's worth. When you take the profits of the day, you divide it by the hours we're open, we're making $500 to $700 an hour. And that is being siphoned out of our communities. It is not being reinvested in workers. It is definitely not being spread among the community. We don't have I don't have purchasing power. And when you hear things like Starbucks plans to do $20 billion in stock buybacks over the next 3 years, you wonder why they're not investing in the people who are the front lines, who have been the front lines, and especially over the past few years.
Senator Lewis, I'm going to ask you the question that I'm sure you've heard from a lot of other folks, which is that age-old argument that if we raise the minimum wage, then small businesses will suffer. You are backing this bill to raise the minimum wage. Tell me what you say to folks who bring that argument to you.
Sure. Well, the first thing I say is that nobody who's working, a full-time job like Rob and so many hundreds of thousands of others in Massachusetts trying to support themselves and their families, should be living in poverty. They should be able to earn, a fair wage with decent benefits and be treated with respect and dignity on the job. And that's what we're trying to do with have, a minimum wage that gets at least closer to reflecting a living wage. And in terms of what I would say to folks, who might oppose an increase in the minimum wage and have certainly always opposed it in the past, it's interesting from 2014, when the minimum wage was $8 an hour in Massachusetts, to where we are today. As you said, we reached $15 an hour at the beginning of this year. In that same time frame, the Massachusetts state economy added more than 250,000 jobs. And today we have the lowest unemployment rate that we've, I think, had ever. So we've certainly seen tremendous growth in our state economy. That's notwithstanding the years of the pandemic. And so it's certainly not the case that we can't increase the minimum wage and also continue to see our economy grow and thrive.
Well, Rob, here's the other thing. I'm sure you've heard this before. Folks might say, then get a better job. that these jobs are for people who are, you know, high school students or college students. I mean, what do you say to folks like that?
Well, first of all, since I'm on the front lines, let me tell you that there's one high schooler that works with us. We're talking about post-college. A lot of people are in transitions. Like myself, I had a career. 20 years I worked in radio, and I found myself unemployed. So this is supposed to be like a rebuilding moment for me, but what it became was a trap. And to those who say, well, the free market, just get another job. When I started at Starbucks, okay, I had multiple job offers. They were all ranging within the $16 to $19 an hour. And what I tried to do is what the free market says. I negotiated with everyone. And I said, hey, could I get a little more money here? But what it boiled down to for me was health insurance. Some companies want you to wait a year, some 3 months. And I said, well, I can't go without it. It's that little thing that humans need. So when I tried to negotiate, they said, you don't have coffee experience. It is what it is. And the funny thing is when we just got a new CEO a few months ago, they gave him an $8 million sign-on bonus just for taking the job. $8 million, hadn't done a day of work, didn't have coffee experience. He came from Pepsi. Maybe caffeine experience was his slip in.
Okay.
But this money is going around, and it doesn't matter when you're at this level, when you're trying to rebuild or you find yourself unemployed or whatever it is, it becomes a trap for you. There is no way out. I cannot afford a car. I've had to turn down better job offers because I don't have a vehicle. Our infrastructure isn't really set up for people to not have a car. So it's very difficult. And I think that's also why we have people forming unions in bigger numbers than ever before, because now we're starting to realize that if it's just me, and I've done this many times, and you're just trying to negotiate, the company goes, nah, it is what it is, or leave it. And then you're really trapped amongst many jobs that are all paying roughly minimum wage. When you have the union, that leverage all of a sudden turns the tides, and you can start to negotiate for higher wages.
Well, that's my other question, Senator Lewis. You know, as we talk about the bill, what are some of the provisions in there for folks who are union workers, for small family businesses? I know that always comes up. Like if you own a pizza restaurant with your family, how does that work? Like things like that.
Sure. You know, absolutely. We do have to be, sensitive to the ability of our small businesses and our nonprofits, to absorb this wage increase. Rob's talking about a huge global corporation like Starbucks. Those companies, I have no doubt that they can afford to pay a higher minimum wage to their frontline workers. They absolutely should be doing that. But in terms of, thinking about smaller businesses, we recognize the challenge, and that's why we would propose in this bill to phase in the increase to $20 an hour. So it wouldn't happen, overnight. We're proposing that it would be phased in over a 4-year period. So the minimum wage would go up from $15 to $16.25, and then continue up from there until it reaches $20. The other thing to recognize is that as the minimum wage goes up, there's very strong economic research that shows that almost every one of those dollars that workers are receiving, they are then turning around and spending that money in their local community for, groceries and rent, healthcare and other costs. And so that money is helping to boost the local economy, including small businesses in the communities that they live in.
Rob, what difference in your life would it make if you were making $20, $25 an hour?
It would make... See, this is the weird part. For some of the people at my company, it's couch change. It's nothing. For me, it is life changing. This is where we talk about you being able to afford the American dream or chase after something or not be stuck in this caste system. And this is how I could get out. I just want to point out too, speaking to local businesses, because I've been since 2017, I've been searching for jobs. And I got to say, the local shops pay more than the huge chains. I've watched many people leave Starbucks because they're making in the 20s, and these are small mom and pops, and they're just out competing when it comes to wages all over the place. And that's just from real life experience. I don't know what statistically speaking, but just even the offers that I've gotten were from local companies, and they were extraordinarily more. But again, it's a trap. I didn't have a vehicle, so I have to turn these things down. And I'd like to point out that, when FDR implemented the minimum wage in 1938, he said this was not meant to be a bare subsistence living. This was meant to be the wages of a decent living. That's what we're asking for here, decency. Because right now, it's a travesty how many people that I talk to every day or I witness working grueling hours at jobs that are just very unthankful, just cannot make ends meet. And since FDR had implemented this in 1938, up until 2014, almost 85 years, it had only gone up $8. That's $1 a decade. We need to keep that in perspective, because when you hear people fighting against this, you have to question what motivates that. Is there profits in that? Because we're just asking, like the senator said, to have some kind of purchasing power, to be able to pay rent without going into debt or having every end of the month be extremely stressful, or choosing between gas and groceries.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to have to leave this conversation there, but I know it's going to be one that's going to be continuing as we look to see where this bill goes. Thank you both for being with me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.